Hey everyone, and welcome to the Deep Dive. We're tackling a pretty big topic today, AI in banking.
Yeah, it's a hot one.
It really is. And, we got to make sure everyone's on the same page. So for folks who are new to this whole AI thing,
Right.
let's break it down real quick. Think of AI as like getting computers to do the stuff that usually needs human smarts, like, figuring out language, spotting patterns.
Making decisions.
Exactly, making decisions.
All that good stuff.
So now, take that and plop it right into the world of banking.
Oh, yeah.
And things get really interesting.
That's where the magic happens.
Right. I mean, even if you haven't really noticed it yet,
It's probably already there.
AI is probably already messing with your banking experience.
In the background, yeah.
Yeah. For this deep dive,
Okay.
we're going to zoom in on two major players that are basically setting the stage for AI in banking.
Yep.
The EU and Singapore.
Big players, for sure.
So we've got the EU's AI Act, which is all about laying down the law.
Rules,
right?
supplies.
And then we've got Singapore's Model AI governance framework, which is a little more,
A little more chill.
flexible.
A little more like guidelines, right?
Guidelines, exactly.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like two different philosophies on how to handle this powerful technology. And understanding them can really help you navigate this whole new world of finance. So
Definitely.
let's kick things off with the EU's AI Act.
Okay, let's do it.
One of the coolest things about it is this risk-based approach. It's basically saying not all AI is created equal.
Right.
Some AI systems in banking could be way riskier than others.
Makes sense.
So we need different levels of rules.
Like, it's almost like safety regulations, Like,
Yeah.
you wouldn't have the same rules for a self-driving car
Yeah.
as you would for, like, a calculator.
Exactly.
And the EU is taking that same idea and applying it to AI in banking.
Yeah, and that makes total sense. So what kind of rules are we actually talking about here? Well, the Act has some pretty interesting requirements for banks that are using AI. For example, transparency is a big one.
Huge.
Banks have to be upfront and tell you when you're dealing with an AI and not a human.
Straight up.
I mean, can you imagine getting financial advice from a chatbot
Oh, wow.
and not even realizing it?
That's a scary thought.
Right.
Yeah, especially when it's your money we're talking about.
Exactly.
Transparency is key, for building that trust. People need to know who or what is making decisions about their finances.
Couldn't agree more. And it's not just about knowing who you're dealing with, but also how that AI is making decisions.
Right.
That's where data quality comes in.
Very important.
The Act says that banks need to make sure that the data they're using to train their AIs is top-notch, unbiased.
The good stuff.
Yeah, the good stuff.
Yeah.
We wouldn't want, like, an algorithm denying someone a loan just because of their zip code. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely not. That's a classic example of why data quality is so crucial. A biased algorithm could lead to some really unfair outcomes, and that's exactly what the EU is trying to prevent.
Yeah, so it's kind of like making sure the AI isn't judging a book by its cover, but actually looking at the content, right?
Good analogy. I like that. And to add another layer of protection, the AI Act also really emphasizes human oversight.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, so it's like having a human in the loop, ready to step in if the AI makes a questionable call.
So you're not just totally at the mercy of a machine.
Exactly.
There's still a human element involved.
It's still got that human touch.
Right, which I think a lot of people find pretty reassuring.
I think so, too.
And then one more thing that really jumps out from the Act is this whole concept of unacceptable AI. There are certain things that are just like off limits, like completely off the table, like social scoring, which is basically judging you based on your online behavior. The EU is drawing a hard line there.
Yeah, they're saying some AI applications are just incompatible with basic rights and values,
Right.
And they're not messing around with that.
No, they're not. Okay, so now let's shift gears and hop over to Singapore. Their Model AI governance framework takes a slightly different approach. Instead of hard and fast rules, it's more about setting these guiding principles and fostering a sense of shared responsibility.
It's like, think of it this way. Traffic laws are important for keeping everyone safe on the road, right?
Right.
But responsible driving habits are just as important. You need both for a truly safe environment. And Singapore's framework is kind of like that. It's about creating a culture of responsible AI use across the board.
So it's less about telling banks exactly what to do and more about encouraging them to adopt those best practices.
Yeah, and think carefully about the ethics involved,
And ethical implications.
Not just blindly applying AI without considering the consequences.
Exactly. And that emphasis on shared responsibility, it actually extends to everyone, right?
Everyone involved, yeah.
From the folks who are developing the AI to the banks using it, and even us, the consumers. We all have a part to play in making sure this AI is used responsibly.
We're all in this together, basically.
We are. And that brings us to data privacy, which is another big focus in Singapore's framework.
Right, makes sense.
Given how much AI relies on data, protecting that data, especially when it's personal information, is absolutely critical.
It's the foundation of it all. AI is a data-hungry machine. The more it has, the better it performs. But that data needs to be handled responsibly,
Right.
We have to respect people's privacy. The framework also puts a lot of emphasis on testing and assurance.
Oh, interesting. So before an AI system is let loose on the banking world, it needs to be thoroughly vetted.
Absolutely. Independent experts need to make sure it's working as intended.
Yeah.
It's like a safety check before a new car hits the market. You want to be sure it's been rigorously tested and meets all the safety standards. Same thing with AI and banking.
Okay, so we've got these two very different approaches, right?
Yeah, two different flavors.
But ultimately, it seems like they're both aiming for the same thing. Safe and ethical AI in banking.
At the end of the day, yeah. I think both frameworks are really grounded in that idea that AI needs to be used responsibly and ethically. They're both trying to strike that balance between innovation and protection, which is, not always easy.
Not always easy, no.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like two different paths leading to the same destination, but how do they actually compare side by side?
Right.
What are some of the key similarities and differences?
Well, both frameworks really prioritize data quality, transparency, and human oversight. Those are the foundational elements of responsible AI, no matter what the specific approach is.
It's like they're both singing from the same hymn sheet.
Yeah, just different tunes, maybe.
Different tunes, exactly.
But when it comes to differences, the biggest one is probably how much they tell you what to do. The EU, with its risk categories and outright bans, is much more hands-on.
Oh, okay.
They're basically setting clear boundaries and saying, here are the rules, follow them.
Whereas Singapore is more like, here are some guidelines. Let's work together and figure this out.
Exactly. More collaborative, more flexible, which, has its pros and cons depending on how it's actually implemented.
For sure.
And this difference actually reflects some broader cultural and philosophical differences, in how these regions approach regulation in general.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. The EU tends to be more rule-based, while Singapore is more about principles and guidelines.
But both are valid ways to tackle this complicated issue, right?
Oh, absolutely.
It's not like one is better than the other.
No, they each have their strengths and weaknesses, and it'll be really interesting to see how each model evolves as AI keeps developing.
Yeah, because it's not slowing down anytime soon.
Not at all.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about the frameworks themselves, but let's bring it back to our listener.
Yeah, let's get practical.
What does all this actually mean for us, the everyday people using banks?
Right.
How is this going to change our experience?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Because ultimately, these regulations are about shaping the future of banking in a way that benefits everyone.
Yeah, so how are these frameworks going to change the game for the average person dealing with their bank? Tell us.
Okay, so one of the most noticeable changes you might see is increased transparency. Like, imagine knowing exactly when you're talking to a customer service bot versus a real human, or getting a clear explanation of how an algorithm assessed your loan application.
Whoa, that would be game-changing. No more guessing if you're talking to a human or a machine.
Yeah.
And finally, understanding how those mysterious financial decisions are actually made.
Exactly. That level of transparency can really empower consumers and build trust in these AI-powered banking systems. And speaking of trust, these regulations are also designed to protect you from potential harms caused by AI errors or biases.
So it's like a safety net to make sure we're not getting unfairly penalized by some algorithm gone haywire.
Exactly, like the emphasis on data quality, for instance. That aims to prevent discriminatory lending practices. And human oversight acts as a safeguard against AI making those really critical decisions without human intervention.
Okay. So it's reassuring to know that there are these measures in place to protect us from the potential downsides of AI, right? But it's not just about the impact on consumers, is it? These regulations are also changing the way banks themselves are developing and deploying AI solutions.
Oh, absolutely. Compliance with these frameworks is a big deal for banks. They have to make sure their AI systems meet all the requirements, which often means investing in better data governance, implementing those transparency mechanisms, and having clear accountability structures.
So it's not just about building cool AI tools anymore, it's about building them responsibly.
Exactly. And in a way that aligns with those regulatory frameworks.
Aligns with the frameworks, right?
And while this might add some complexity and cost for banks in the short term, it also presents an opportunity. Banks that can show they're committed to ethical AI and compliance, they can build trust with their customers and gain a competitive edge.
It's like a seal of approval, right?
Exactly.
Signaling to customers that the bank is taking this seriously.
They're not just playing around with AI, they're doing it responsibly.
Yeah, which in a world where data breaches and algorithm biases are making headlines, that kind of reassurance is really valuable.
Oh, absolutely. And beyond just compliance, these regulations are encouraging banks to think more strategically about their AI initiatives. For instance, the emphasis on human oversight is prompting banks to rethink the role of human employees in this AI-driven world.
So instead of seeing AI as a replacement for humans, they're starting to see it as a way to enhance what humans can do.
Exactly. Like AI can handle those repetitive tasks, analyze mountains of data, and identify patterns that humans might miss. And that frees up human employees to focus on the more complex strategic work that requires things like creativity and empathy.
Yeah.
Things that are hard to automate.
So it's like giving bank employees a superpower assistant to handle the busy work while they focus on giving personalized advice and building relationships with customers.
Exactly.
And those are things that are pretty tough to automate, right?
Absolutely. And this collaboration between humans and AI is only going to become more important as AI technology keeps advancing. You know, it's not humans versus machines. It's about humans and machines working together to get better outcomes.
And this shift has some interesting implications for the skills and training needed for people who want to work in banking in the future.
Definitely. As AI gets more integrated into banking, employees will need new skills to thrive in this new landscape.
Yeah.
Things like data analysis, AI interpretation, and ethical decision making.
So it's not just about knowing how to crunch numbers anymore. It's about understanding how AI works, how to interpret what it's telling you, and how to make responsible decisions when you're working alongside these, intelligent systems.
Exactly. It's a whole new way of thinking about banking. And the skills you need to succeed in this rapidly changing industry are changing too.
Now, speaking of rapidly changing technology, there's a specific type of AI that's been creating a lot of buzz lately. Generative AI.
Oh, yeah, generative AI is having a moment.
It is. And while it might seem more at home in those creative fields, it actually has a lot of potential in finance.
Surprising potential, yeah.
Wait, the AI that can write poems and compose music?
That's the one.
What's that got to do with banking?
More than you might think. It can be used to personalize financial advice, create really realistic simulations for risk management, and even detect fraud by finding unusual patterns in transactions.
Wow. So it's not just about creating art. It's about using that creative power to solve real-world problems in finance.
Exactly. But, generative AI also comes with its own set of challenges and risks. And regulators are starting to address those. One big concern is the potential for bias.
Bias. But how can AI be biased? It's just a machine, right?
Right. But remember, AI learns from the data it's fed. And if that data reflects existing biases in society, well, the AI can actually perpetuate and even amplify those biases.
Oh, I see.
For example, you could have a generative AI model used for credit scoring that unfairly disadvantages certain groups of people if it's been trained on biased data.
So it all comes back to the importance of data quality, making sure that AI is learning from fair and unbiased sources.
Absolutely. Garbage in, garbage out, as they say.
Exactly. And then there's the potential for misuse, right? I mean, generative AI can create those super realistic deepfakes, and those could be used for phishing scams or other shady stuff.
Oh, yeah, that's a scary thought.
Right. Like you could get an email that looks exactly like it's from your bank asking for your login details, but it's actually a fake generated by AI.
That's the kind of thing that keeps regulators up at night.
Rightly so.
And that's why these frameworks like the EU AI Act and Singapore's Model AI Governance Framework are so important. They're trying to put safeguards in place to ensure that generative AI is used responsibly and ethically.
So it's like giving someone a really powerful tool, but also giving them some safety guidelines and making sure they use it responsibly.
Yeah, because in the wrong hands, this technology could be misused in a lot of ways.
Absolutely. And this just highlights the need for more research, right?
Always.
To better understand what generative AI can do, its limitations, and develop ways to protect against potential risks.
We need to stay ahead of the curve.
Yeah. It's like a constant game of catch-up, trying to make sure the rules are relevant as AI gets smarter and more sophisticated.
That's a good way to put it. But it's a game worth playing because the stakes are high. The responsible development of AI in banking has the potential to completely revolutionize the industry.
Yeah.
Improve financial inclusion and make the customer experience so much better.
It has a lot of potential.
It does. But we need to move carefully and make sure these powerful technologies are used for good, not for harm.
That's a really great point to end on. We've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive, from the different regulatory approaches to the impact on banks and the rise of generative AI.
And we've only scratched the surface.
Yeah, just the tip of the iceberg. The world of AI in banking is huge, and it's changing all the time. It's really fascinating to see how these technologies are shaping the future of finance.
It's an exciting time to be following this field, that's for sure.
Absolutely. Now, for our listeners who want to see this AI in action, stay tuned for part 3, where we'll dive into some real-world examples of how AI is already transforming the banking landscape. We'll be right back after a quick night.
Okay, so one of the biggest impacts you might notice is increased transparency. Imagine knowing exactly when you're talking to a customer service bot versus a real person, or getting a clear explanation of how an algorithm assessed your loan application.
Whoa. That would be a game changer for sure. No more wondering, am I talking to a human or a machine? And actually understanding how those financial decisions are made.
Exactly. That level of transparency can really empower consumers, and it can help build trust in these AI-powered banking systems. And speaking of trust, these regulations are also designed to protect you from potential harms caused by AI errors or biases.
So like a safety net to make sure we're not getting unfairly penalized by an algorithm that's gone a little haywire.
Exactly. Like the emphasis on data quality, for instance. That aims to prevent those discriminatory lending practices. And human oversight acts as a safeguard against AI, making those really critical decisions without a human stepping in.
Okay, so it's good to know that there are measures in place to protect us from the potential downsides of AI. But it's not just about the impact on consumers, is it? These regulations are also changing the way banks themselves are developing and deploying AI solutions.
Oh, absolutely. Compliance with these frameworks is a major consideration for banks. They have to make sure their AI systems meet all the requirements, which often means investing in better data governance practices, implementing those transparency mechanisms, and establishing clear accountability structures.
So it's not just about building a cool AI tool anymore. It's about building it responsibly and making sure it aligns with these regulatory frameworks.
Exactly. And while this might add some complexity and cost for banks in the short term, it also presents an opportunity. Banks that can demonstrate their commitment to ethical AI and compliance can build trust with their customers and gain a competitive edge.
That was like a seal of approval, right? Signaling to customers that this bank is taking AI ethics seriously.
Exactly.
Which in a world where data breaches and algorithm biases are making headlines all the time, that kind of reassurance can be invaluable.
Absolutely. And beyond just compliance, these regulations are encouraging banks to think more strategically about their AI initiatives. For instance, the emphasis on human oversight is prompting banks to rethink the role of human employees in this increasingly AI-driven world.
So instead of viewing AI as a replacement for humans, they're starting to see it as a way to enhance what humans can do.
Exactly. Like AI can handle those repetitive tasks, analyze mountains of data, identify patterns that humans might miss, and that frees up human employees to focus on more complex, more strategic work that requires things like creativity, empathy, critical thinking, the things that are hard to automate.
So it's almost like giving those bank employees a superpower assistant who can handle all the grunt work while they focus on providing more personalized advice and building relationships with those customers.
Exactly.
And those are things that are pretty tough to automate, right?
Absolutely. And this collaboration between humans and AI is only going to become more important as AI technology continues to advance. It's not about humans versus machines. It's about humans and machines working together to achieve better outcomes.
And this shift has some pretty interesting implications for the skills and training that people need to work in banking in the future.
Oh, definitely. As AI becomes more integrated into banking operations, employees will need new skills to thrive in this new landscape. Things like data analysis, AI interpretation, ethical decision-making. These are all areas that are going to become increasingly important for banking professionals.
So it's not just about knowing how to crunch numbers anymore. It's about understanding how AI works, how to interpret its outputs, and how to make responsible decisions when you're working alongside these, intelligent systems.
Exactly. It's a whole new way of thinking about banking and the skills you need to succeed in this rapidly changing industry.
Now, speaking of rapidly changing technology, there's a specific type of AI that's been creating a lot of buzz lately. Generative AI.
Oh, yeah, generative AI is having a moment.
It is. And while it might seem more at home in those creative industries, it actually has surprising potential in finance.
Yeah, more than you might think.
Wait, the AI that can write poems and compose music?
That's the one.
What's that got to do with banking?
More than you'd think. It can be used to personalize financial advice, create incredibly realistic simulations for risk management, and even detect fraud by identifying unusual patterns in transactions.
So it's not just about creating art. It's about using that creative power to solve real-world problems in finance.
Exactly. But, generative AI also introduces a whole new set of challenges and risks.
Right.
And regulators are starting to address those. One concern is bias.
Bias. But how can AI be biased? It's just a machine.
Well, remember, AI learns from the data it's fed. And if that data reflects existing biases in society, the AI can perpetuate and even amplify those biases.
Yeah.
For example, you could have a generative AI model that's used for credit scoring, and it unfairly disadvantages certain groups of people if it's been trained on biased data.
So it all comes back to data quality, making sure that AI is learning from those fair and unbiased sources.
Exactly. Garbage in, garbage out, as they say.
Exactly. And then there's potential for misuse, right? Generative AI can create those incredibly realistic deepfakes, and those could be used for phishing scams or other fraudulent activity.
Oh, yeah, that's a scary thought.
Right. You could get an email that looks exactly like it's from your bank asking for your login details, but it's actually a fake generated by AI.
That's the kind of scenario that keeps regulators up at night.
For sure.
And that's why those frameworks, like the EU AI Act and Singapore's Model AI Governance Framework, are so important. They're trying to put those safeguards in place to ensure that generative AI is used responsibly and ethically.
It's like giving someone this really powerful tool, but also providing those safety guidelines, making sure they use it responsibly.
Yeah, because in the wrong hands, this technology could be misused in a lot of ways.
Absolutely. And this highlights the need for more research and development to understand generative AI better, like its capabilities, its limitations, and developing robust safeguards against the potential risks.
Yeah, we got to stay ahead of the curve.
It's a constant game of catch-up, trying to keep the rules relevant as AI gets smarter and more sophisticated.
That is. But it's a game worth playing because the stakes are high. The responsible development and deployment of AI in banking has the potential to revolutionize the industry, improve financial inclusion, and really enhance that customer experience. But we need to proceed with caution and make sure that these powerful technologies are being used for good, not for harm.
That is a great point to end on. We've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive, from those different regulatory approaches to the impacts on banks and this rise of generative AI.
And we've only just scratched the surface. The world of AI in banking is vast and constantly evolving, and it's fascinating to see how these technologies are shaping the future of finance.
It's an exciting time to be following this field. Now, for our listeners who want to see this AI in action, stay tuned for part 3, where we'll dive into some real-world examples of how AI is already transforming the banking landscape. We'll be right back after a quick. All right, welcome back to the deep dive. We've been unpacking this whole world of AI in banking, from the regulations shaping it to how it's impacting banks and us, the customers. But now let's make it real, Let's see how AI is actually playing out in real life.
Let's get down to brass tacks.
Yeah, give me some concrete examples.
Okay, so one area where you're probably already running into AI is customer service. Think about those chatbots you see on banking websites or in the apps.
Yeah.
They're getting so much more sophisticated, they can handle a lot more than they used to.
So it's not just like getting basic account info anymore.
Or no, not at all. AI-powered chatbots can help you reset your password, answer questions about specific transactions, and even give you some basic financial advice. And they're learning all the time from every interaction. So they just keep getting more efficient and accurate over time.
That's pretty impressive. But what happens if, the chatbot hits a wall and just can't answer my question.
That's where the humans step in.
Well,
These chatbots are really designed to handle the more routine stuff, freeing up those human agents to focus on the more complex issues, the ones that need a human touch.
right.
Empathy, critical thinking, nuanced decision-making, all that.
So it's like a tag team.
Oh,
AI handles that first line of defense, and the humans are there for the trickier situations.
exactly. And this boost in efficiency isn't limited to just customer service. AI is changing how banks operate behind the scenes, too.
Oh, interesting.
Making things like fraud detection and loan approvals much faster and more streamlined.
So it's like having a whole army of tireless robots working back there.
You could say that. AI algorithms can analyze huge amounts of data to spot patterns and things that seem off, things that humans might miss. For example, in fraud detection, AI can spot a weird transaction in real time, potentially stopping someone from losing money.
That's a big win for everyone, right?
For sure. Banks and customers.
Okay, but what about personalized financial advice? I've been hearing a lot about robo-advisors. Are they really the future of financial planning?
Robo-advisors are definitely gaining traction, and there's a good reason for that. They use AI to build a personalized investment portfolio just for you based on your risk tolerance, financial goals, and what's happening in the market.
So it's like having a dedicated financial advisor, but way cheaper.
That's the big appeal. But, it's important to remember that robo-advisors are tools. They're not right for everyone.
Right.
It's always a good idea to do your own research and understand the risks.
Right. Always.
But for people who are new to investing or just don't have the time to manage their own portfolio, robo-advisors can be a great option.
For sure. And this personalized approach, it goes beyond just investing, right?
It does, yeah. AI is also being used to customize banking services and offers, to match what you need and prefer.
So instead of getting those generic spam emails, I might get recommendations that are actually relevant to my financial goals.
Exactly. AI can look at your spending habits, how you save, and your goals and give you personalized advice and help you make better financial decisions.
It's like having a personal financial assistant.
Kind of, yeah.
Always looking out for you.
Okay, let's talk about security for a minute. With all this AI and data flying around, how are banks keeping our info safe?
Security is huge, and AI is actually playing a key role in beefing up those security measures. Like we talked about earlier, AI is great at spotting patterns and anything unusual, so it's really good at catching fraudulent transactions right when they happen.
Like a super smart security guard for my accounts.
Exactly. And AI is being used to make logging in more secure too, using biometrics like facial recognition or voice recognition to verify your identity.
That's way more secure and definitely easier than remembering a million passwords. Definitely. These advancements are making banking safer and more user-friendly than ever.
It's really incredible to see how much AI is changing the banking landscape, and in so many ways.
And this is just the beginning. As AI keeps evolving, we can expect even more creative uses in the future.
Oh yeah, it's an exciting time to be paying attention to this field. Well, this has been a fascinating deep dive into the world of AI in banking. We've explored the rules, the impacts, and even seen how it's playing out in the real world. Any final thoughts you want to leave our listeners with?
I think it's clear that AI has the potential to completely revolutionize banking, make it more efficient, more personalized, and safer. But it's critical that we approach it responsibly and ethically. The regulations we talked about are crucial for guiding its development, and we as consumers need to stay informed and be part of the conversation about how AI is being used in our financial lives.
Well said. It's not about being afraid of AI, but about understanding its potential.
Right.
And making sure it works for us, not against us.
Exactly. It's about using AI's power while also protecting our values and making sure everyone benefits from its advancements.
And on that note, we'll wrap up this deep dive into AI in banking. Thanks for joining us on this journey, everyone, and remember, stay curious and keep exploring this ever-changing world of tech.